Hello, Cleveland. Welcome to the Dawgland Podcast. I am your host, Anthony Joki. On today's episode, because we have a handful of names that are being brought in for second interviews for the Cleveland Browns head coaching search, we are going to go over those, but I cannot do this alone. Got my co-host, Jackson McCurry, alongside me today. Jack, man, how we doing?
Doing well, man. Obviously, this coaching search is still ongoing, and it doesn't look like the end is any nearer than the last time we spoke. So, other than that, all in all, it's good, man. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Just kind of chilling and relaxing today. Can't complain too much about that. But yeah, we want to get in here, talk about some of these guys a little more in depth, and you know, see who we think might be the best fit here. So I guess the first one that we'll start with is somebody who we have been familiar with over the last handful of seasons, and that is Jim Schwartz, the current defensive coordinator of the Browns. And he has been brought in for two interviews for the head coaching spot. And, Jack, it seems like if they want to kind of go with status quo, you know, Jim is the best option for that. Obviously, you would have to find somebody to run the offense because he is a defensive head coach, and Tommy Rees followed Kevin Stefanski down to Atlanta. So you'd have to bring somebody in order to run the offense. But what are your overall thoughts about Jim potentially being the head coach of this team?
I mean, you hit the nail on the head. If they want to keep things status quo, keep some continuity, some familiarity with the guys in the locker room, like Jim Schwartz makes the most sense. Obviously, he's been in the league a long time, former head coach. We saw what he did with Detroit back in the late 2000s, early 2010s with Matt Stafford and Calvin Johnson, you know, bringing them up from 0-16 all the way to a playoff berth during his, was it 5, 6 seasons as head coach. Obviously, what he's been able to do with the defense the last couple of years here in Cleveland has been phenomenal, making it one of the best in the league through his leadership, obviously, and coaching. Um, but like when I look at these, like if you're ranking the four candidates that we know of right now, I would probably put him fourth because my thought process is if we're hiring Jim Schwartz as head coach, I have questions on who's he bringing in as offensive coordinator. Um, is he willing to bring in one of these young up and comers from the McVay tree, the Shanahan tree, one of these, guys that could be a head coach in the next couple years? Like, what's his mindset in terms of fixing the offense, which we all know needs a major overhaul? But he's been here the last couple seasons. There's been games where the defense has not looked great, where it's been exposed. It showed plenty of the flaws that it has at times, even though it's been one of the best in the league. But you're pretty much telling the locker room that the offense was the issue. Jim Schwartz wasn't an issue to why the Browns only won 8 games the last couple years. And if he comes in, Anthony, and he doesn't win as many games as Kevin Stefanski's last couple seasons here, so if he doesn't win at least 4 games, you're wasting another year. He feels like a one and done type head coaching hire to me, which we've seen with Chudzinski, with Freddie Kitchens during our time. It just feels like a waste that we would go in the direction of we're going to pick Jim Schwartz to be our head coach. He's going to be our coach for the next few years. I can't buy that sell from Jimmy Haslam and Andrew Berry. I just can't.
Yeah, I think the one thing that is a positive about Schwartz, and you've kind of heard it, rumblings of it over the last few weeks, is the accountability factor. I think that from what we've heard, that really wasn't the case with Kevin with certain people, especially at the quarterback position. And we know, prior to this season, I would say, with certain people not holding them accountable, high priced contract guys. Um, but I think with the defense, that accountability has been there, and you could see the flashes of how really good it is. And if he's able to hold the entire team accountable to the same way he holds his defense, that could go a long way, especially if they're going to roll with a younger quarterback here. Now, you're right about the offensive coordinator part, and maybe a couple of these guys that are in here for head coaching interviews could potentially be that here. Um, but I think that if they do go this route, I have a feeling that this team and the players in this locker room, with how young it is, that accountability factor will go a long way.
Yeah, I definitely think Schwartz would hold guys accountable. Uh, I think Kevin tried to do that at times. Still scratching my head at the big one this past season with Wyatt Teller. Even, part of it was injury, but part of it was they're saying was performance. But benching Wyatt Teller, and we're still not getting all the answers on how that situation unfolded. But yeah, I mean, Jim would hold guys accountable. That's for sure. Obviously, the defensive side of the ball, they were advocating for it, and I think Miles, Grant Delpit, Denzel Ward, the leaders on that side of the ball, they were pushing for Schwartz to be a head coaching option for the Browns, and ultimately he still is. I still have question marks if he's really ultimately going to get the job. It just seems like that's something Andrew Berry, I don't think, would want to do. I feel like the Haslams, J.W. Johnson, they're on the more of the side that they're probably pushing for Jim Schwartz to potentially be the next head coach. But yeah, all in all, like if we had to rank them, I'd probably put him fourth among the options right now because I just don't see a path to success with Schwartz. And I think he's been great as a DC. I think if they go another route, I would love if they could keep him around and to continue to be the DC and be like maybe assistant head coach for one of these younger guys. But I just can't. I can't buy the sell on Jim Schwartz being the next Browns head coach. I just don't see it ending in success, long term success, especially.
Yeah, and when you look at a couple of these other candidates, they're young offensive minds, and if he were to stick around, I think it would go a long way for either or for any of these offensive guys really, because the other three are all offensive minds. If any of these guys want to keep Jim Schwartz around, I think that would be very beneficial to them to have a veteran coach like him helping out these young first timers. And when I say young, a couple of them are pretty young. Grant
Oh yeah.
Udinski just turned 30 years old. You know, very young mind, really a high riser here. Nate Scheelhaase, also young as well. Todd Monken has been in the league for quite a while, so he's a little bit older. But when you look at Udinski and what he has been credited with over the last couple seasons, really reviving Sam Darnold up in Minnesota, um, making Trevor Lawrence into or helping make Trevor Lawrence into a really good quarterback this year. Granted, he has all the talent in the world, but they were able to put things together down there in Jacksonville this year, and you saw what they were able to accomplish this season. What are your feelings on Udinski based on what you've seen from him over the last couple of seasons and being a very high riser in this league in terms of an offensive mind?
I mean, he's got rave reviews from a lot of different people. Obviously Kevin O'Connell spoke so highly of him. There's a clip going around where he said that he spent probably more time. He spent with as much or even more time with Udinski than he did with his wife, and I thought that was pretty hilarious because we know football coaches, they're pretty dedicated and they spend a lot of time in the facility. So that just goes to show you how much time uh, Udinski and O'Connell spent together in Minnesota. Um, Funny enough, I don't even know if everybody saw this. Mike Pettin was on Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, and they went to the same high school in Pennsylvania, even though obviously the age gap is pretty significant. But they're both from Central Bucks West in Pennsylvania. But Pettin said that because of that connection, he helped Kevin O'Connell turn to Grant Udinski. But we've seen the clips of press conferences, and we've read a lot about this guy because it just seems like he's been the front runner here the last week or so to be the next Browns head coach. But very high football IQ. They said he works his tail off with the quarterbacks, with the offensive play callers, whether it's been in Minnesota or Jacksonville. Um, just incredible football acumen. Like they said, he's done a lot, like shadowing these offensive coordinators and head coaches, like seeing the ins and outs of what they do. Obviously, he's the OC in Jacksonville, but was not calling plays. Obviously, that goes to Liam Cohen, but he's a grinder, works his tail off, like understands the positions and the roles. So this is obviously like the big swing. We talked about it on the last episode when we talked about some of the candidates already. Like this is you take the big swing here and see if it pays off. I mean, I know a lot of people are comparing him to Sean McVay and their football resumes. McVay was obviously a play caller in Washington before he got the head coaching gig in Los Angeles. So Udinski doesn't have that. He's never been a play caller at the NFL level, even at the college level. But this is, you're betting on this guy being the next big thing. And it would be a big swing. But with this guy being 30 years old, like obviously, like he's not a finished product as a coach, but from the understanding that he killed the first interview with the Browns and the fact that he's still in this position to be a finalist must mean that he really impressed Andrew Berry and Jimmy Haslam during that initial interview, and all the background work that they've done. The fact that he is a finalist right now and he has the big interview tomorrow in Cleveland, it bodes well for him. We'll see if he obviously knocks this one out as well. But, you know, with this, we talked about what kind of staff Jim Schwartz is going to put together. With the young guys, Anthony, and their NFL Rolodex isn't as significant as Jim Schwartz is. The big thing is, what's their staff going to look like? Because obviously, Udinski being so young, he's only got a couple stops on his NFL journey, but is he going to be able to put together a strong staff?
Yeah, and I think one of the things you touched upon there that he has to call plays. Would you expect him to be the play caller, being as young as he is as a head coach in the NFL? Would you expect him to, be that main guy, or do you want him being the guy that is just going to lead this team? We've seen over the last handful of seasons with Kevin and others, like, all right, is Kevin calling plays? Who else is calling plays? Like, is this a situation where you absolutely expect Udinski to call plays, or do you bring in a veteran guy? I'm just saying Monken because we already talked about him, or another guy who has called plays in this league that is a veteran coach, and they call the plays based on what Udinski wants to run.
I mean, you would think because he has the inexperience and he's obviously never done it that he would rely on somebody that's been a play caller. But this is his opportunity to do both. And we've seen guys do both. We know there's the perception out there that that's too much on their plate. A lot of people said that about Kevin Stefanski. I think if you're good at balancing several different jobs, I don't think it's so much to overcome. Obviously, there's a lot of successful head coaches in the NFL that are head coaches and offensive play callers. So I think it can be done. I mean, yes, he's a young first time head coach. Maybe he won't want to put too much on his plate. Just looking at some of the connections, I mean, would he call up Josh McCown, former Browns quarterback, who's the QB coach in Minnesota? Would he have somebody in Jacksonville that he could trust to call the plays on offense? I think we don't know for sure who he's going to ultimately tab as offensive coordinator. Obviously, he's part of the McVay coaching tree, so maybe he plucks somebody from the Los Angeles Rams that he's familiar with, or maybe somebody from Green Bay off Matt LaFleur's staff, or does he know anybody in the Shanahan tree that he feels comfortable with? That's the thing at the end of the day. He's got to get somebody he's going to feel comfortable with, somebody he probably knows and trusts, and then work on it from there. He's never called plays before, so we can't really assess that part of the game. But him being an offensive coordinator, we know he's part of designing the scheme, designing the game plan. So I would feel comfortable because he's been learning under guys that are successful at it in that aspect.
All right, when you look at Nate Scheelhaase, you can say a lot of things about him that you can about Udinski. Obviously, also being a young coach, he is the passing game coordinator for the LA Rams. But he has called plays before. He called them for Iowa State in 2023. So that is a small difference between the two. What are your thoughts on Scheelhaase and what he could bring to the Browns?
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty much like Udinski in the same boat. Obviously a rising star in the NFL circles. Um, you know, former quarterback. Obviously, he was a quarterback at Illinois and then worked his way up the coaching ranks at Illinois, at Iowa State under Matt Campbell. And then got to LA where he's been under Sean McVay the last couple seasons. Um, and he's, obviously interviewing other places for head coach. Uh, but he's like you said, in the same realm as a Udinski. He's young, has not called plays at the NFL level. But it's, you see all these guys that have come underneath the Shanahans, the LaFleurs, the McVays, like these young coaches that all these NFL teams want to take a chance on. And this would be in that same boat as Udinski, where it's another big swing. Guys have said a lot of nice, positive things about Scheelhaase. Obviously, he's getting rave reviews for how he's interviewed. This is the one where the Browns have been waiting for him. Obviously, at the end of last Sunday, we kind of thought that maybe he would interview this week. Now we got to wait till this coming Monday to interview him. And if the Rams win, the Browns will have to wait 2 more weeks to potentially hire him as the next head coach. So that's why, all the uproar about the process and the Browns taking forever to hire a head coach. Well, the rules have changed, obviously, and if this is your guy, you're going to have to wait a long time for him. So it's going to be interesting to see, do the Browns, if they've targeted Scheelhaase as their next guy, are they going to be patient enough for him? We remember back in 2014, we all thought Dan Quinn was going to be the next head coach, and the Browns' patience was tested, and they ultimately went in the direction of Mike Pettin. Dan Quinn still a head coach in this league. Mike Pettin just retired from coaching, so just goes to show, if you want the right guy, you're going to have to be patient for him. And if Scheelhaase is the guy they're hoping for, they may have to wait a few more weeks for him. So it'd be interesting to see how that whole situation plays out if the Browns obviously go in that direction.
Yeah, and the Browns aren't the only patient team at the moment. It's the Browns, the Steelers, the Ravens, and others. Like, these are all teams that still need a head coach. And, Scheelhaase has been mentioned in those circles as well. So not only are you battling the patience factor, but you're battling these other franchises too, of guys or of options for Scheelhaase and where he can go. So, you know, it could, if Scheelhaase is the guy and he ultimately chooses somewhere else, are you back to square one, or what do you got to do at that point? Like, are you on your third, fourth, fifth option? Like, it's a tough situation for where they're sitting at the moment. Um, and the last guy that we have to kind of discuss here a little bit is Todd Monken, and I feel like this is more so under the guise of he's going to be an offensive coordinator if one of these three other uh, candidates gets hired. But what would your thoughts be if they chose Monken to be the head coach here?
It, it it would be a surprise. I would agree with you. I feel like he would be an offensive coordinator option more so than a head coach, but he's got options. I mean, we all kind of thought maybe Tampa would be an option. They went in another direction. The Giants have made the most sense. It was reported the day Harbaugh agreed to terms with the Giants that it was expected that Monken was going to follow him to New York, but obviously there's a process to hiring coordinators as well. You got to fulfill the Rooney rule there as well. But I mean, he's done great work as offensive coordinators, whether it's at Georgia or Baltimore the last several years. Obviously, there was a rift there. We just call it a rift triangle, perhaps, between Lamar Jackson and Harbaugh and Monken. Obviously, he's got familiarity with Cleveland. He was here in 2019. Um, he was the coordinator here, but we all know he was not the play caller. That was Freddie, but he's had great work with offenses. Obviously, he's not shy from. He'll design his offense that'll fit the quarterback. Obviously, we've seen what he was able to do in Georgia, with those quarterbacks there. Obviously, in Cleveland, he worked with Baker Mayfield, who's more of a drop back passer, and then he goes to Baltimore, works with Lamar, who is more of a dual threat type. So I don't think he's fit to one scheme. I think he's very adaptable, but I don't see him as a legit head coaching candidate here. I would agree with you if he's open to being an OC. I think that's more realistically here in Cleveland, maybe under one of these young finalists, but we'll see. Maybe they'll shock the world and hire Todd Monken. I just don't see it being a legit possibility.
You know, a lot of the hang up for these coaching candidates, you know, especially the offensive guys, is probably the quarterback situation and the uncertainty here. So as it stands here on January 22nd, how would this play out for you? Are you rolling with Shedeur for this season? Are you finding a veteran quarterback for this year? Are you drafting somebody? You know, obviously with where they're picking in the first round, it'd be pretty difficult to draft somebody unless you want to go the Ty Simpson route. You know, what are your thoughts about the quarterback situation as it stands and how, you know, um, these offensive minds could be held up coming here as head coach because of it?
I I like Shador. Obviously, that's been no secret, but I want to see competition with him this year. And that's not it's not going to be Deshaun Watson. I don't think it's going to be Dylan Gabriel. Wouldn't shock me if he's moved in the offseason. But so I'm finding a veteran to compete with him, whether it's Malik Willis in free agency, Mac Jones in a trade, somebody that's going to push Shador. I there was positives, but there was definitely some negatives as well to his rookie season. You can blame it on the personnel. You could blame it on coaching. Everybody's got their conspiracy theory on why he didn't get out there as quick as he did. I mean, if you actually paid attention during training camp, preseason, you'll understand why he sat there as long as he did until it was time to finally put him out there. And I think there's still some hope for him that he can turn into something in the NFL, but by no means am I just handing him the keys and saying you're getting all the first team reps this offseason. I think you're going to bring in competition, you're going to upgrade the personnel around him, and then you see what happens in 2026. But by no means is the quarterback position solved here in Cleveland. I think it is still a question mark, and it will always be a question mark until we find that right guy.
Yeah, and like I said, unfortunately, you're not in the position to take the best guy in the draft, number one overall, with Mendoza. So you have to kind of figure out what you want to do. Do you want to roll with Shador? And if you're in the same situation next year, maybe you're picking first or second and get one of these, or even a top 10, because there are 5 or 6 guys that went back to college that are probably going to go potentially in the first round next year, as well as a guy like Julian saying too. So there are a lot of quarterbacks. It seems like next year. So do you roll with Shador this year and see how it goes, or bring in competition? Maybe one of those guys wins the job. Do you look into finding a Sam Darnold situation, for this team? A lot of big question marks for sure. And we'll see how this all season folds or shapes out here over these next couple months with free agency about 6 weeks away. Um, the new league year, so trades will be made, all that kind of stuff. Curious to see how it all shakes out, but currently a lot of question marks, more than answers than we have at the moment with quarterback position, coaching staff, all that kind of stuff. So hopefully, we'll get some of those answers pretty soon. And be sure to stay tuned to the podcast here as we will be covering all of that. And be sure to stay tuned to Jack over on X at Jack McCurry08, me at Anthony Joki, Joki, the Dawgland on all the platforms as well. We're going to get out of here, be back hopefully next week, depending on the coaching search. Maybe if something happens over the next 48 hours, maybe we'll pop in here as well. You never know. We're playing the waiting game just like everybody else with this coaching search at the moment. So we will see everybody next time. Always remember, as you we head on out of here. Go Browns.
Go Browns.